Mr. Reed.
I call the study session of August 14th, 2023 to order. All council members are here except for Councilmember Reed, who I have not heard from, and Councilmember Hochstetter, who did call in. Do I have a motion to excuse Councilmember Hochstetter?
I make a motion to excuse or Deputy Mayor Hochstetter.
Yes, thank you.
I second that.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Botetto and seconded by Councilmember Cole. So with that,
Anything about that?
oh, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
passes unanimous. Thank you. All right,
Who's joining right now?
Councilmember Reed is joining at 6:02. Very good. All right. Let's move to study session business number 1. Planning and Parks update.
Thank you, Mayor. And as at your pleasure, we're hoping to switch the order of tonight's
Yeah.
agenda, and put
You-
MIC transit update first.
You just told me that, so we will go for number 2 first, which is MIC transit update and report. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Wendish, who will introduce this topic.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is Brian Windish, your Community and Economic Development Director. And want to provide an update on the Sumner Commuter Connector, also known as the MIC Transit Pilot Project. And so I will be given an update. We had promised council that we would come back after the shuttle had been in operation for at least 6 months. We've gone into 6 or 7 or 8 months here, so apologize for that. But we started the service January 9th, and it's been growing, and I'll go over some of the details there. I did want to start with a background on the Sumner Commuter Connector, just to bring everybody kind of back up to speed, the conversations we had last year about this time during the budget process, and kind of the goals and objectives of the service, and report on current progress, and then talk a little bit about our next steps as we look further into the future. As you all know, the shuttle serves our Sumner Pacific Manufacturing Industrial Center, which is a regionally designated MIC that was designated by the Puget Sound Regional Council, and it has a lot of employment up there. We have about 17,000 employees with a growth capacity, looking into our future targets for employment of 4,000 to 5,000 employees. And as I'm sure you're all aware, it's also home to a lot of large employers, not the least of which is REI, Amazon, Costco, Sekisui Aerospace, and a number of others that are out there, a couple more that I'll bring up tonight. And the area, not unlike other industrial areas in the county, is not served by transit. And so that's kind of a problem. So that's what the pilot project was intended to address, is this demand for transit in the area. Many of the employers have employees who are using transit to commute to work. They manage to find their way to our Sounder station through riding the Sounder, and then the last mile connection, as it's called in the transit industry, getting from the Sounder station out to their actual place of employment. They walk, they ride bikes, they ride scooters, and it's also really hard on the temporary employees, because if they're not to work at a certain point in time, if they're late at all, they typically lose their job. So that makes it really difficult. And for one reason or another, not the least of which is cost, many of those using transit don't own a car for one reason or another. And I mentioned that other industrial areas in the county don't have transit, and they've been trying to get transit, or they're also doing pilot projects. Pierce Transit's doing one down on the Tide Flats. And we ended up meeting, I was part of a group that met with a couple of the businesses on the Tide Flats to talk about transit, because we're doing our pilot project and they thought we could bring some insights. What I learned from them, so there's a company down on the Tide Flats called Concrete Tech, and they are turning people over fairly frequently in terms of hiring. And they said 2 out of 10 people they interview don't have a car, like they need a transit option. So we are not unique in terms of trying to find some solutions in order to get people to work safely and efficiently. So when we started the operations, we contracted with BusUp, and BusUp is our consultant who manages the actual operators, which is Beeline Mobility. And they also they're out there doing the work of marketing heavily, working hard to talk to employers, talk to businesses, talk to riders, and have been really marketing this in a really active way, boots on the ground. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But as we were moving into this agreement with BusUp, the understanding was the shuttle would operate to serve the Sumner Transit Station in the North End. It would be $6 per ride, or $12 round trip. There's an assumption made that about 10% of the employment base would not own a car or be not using a car for transportation. Employers would sign up for the service and subsidize the rides for employees, and that it would be a 12-month pilot project, starting the first 6 months at a cost of $10,000 per month, and then escalating to $13,750 per month for the second 6 months. And the assumption was that the fares would offset city costs, which they do. But as we look into the numbers, we haven't had a lot of ridership, so there hasn't been a lot of offset yet. So those are the assumptions going into it. And then it's a pilot, so we had to make some adjustments as we went along. So our mid-year adjustments to things had to do with how much the charge was per ride. We ended up lowering that cost to $3 per ride. We've also asked for employers to subsidize the cost for their employees at least 50%. And thankfully, some of the employees now, the ones we were expecting, like REI and Amazon, are willing to, at $3 per ride, are willing to finance it at 100% in terms of subsidies. So we also made an adjustment to allow for employees to ride and pay their fare without an employer agreement. So the original setup was we'd go to Amazon or whoever, and they would sign up as an employer, and then their employees could ride. We made a mid-year adjustment to allow for anybody to ride because we were getting a lot of people walking up to the shuttle that was parked at this train station. Hey, how do I ride this? I'd love to ride this. And so we made that adjustment and gained some ridership. The other benefit to having employees ride, if their employer is not signed up, is they can now advocate for it. They can talk to other employees, they can talk to their HR director, they can talk to their boss. They're like, I'm getting here on this shuttle and it's a great thing. So that's a nice way to kind of get through the door with employers as well and really establish a need. And then the other win that we had hoped for, and it worked out, is we actually parked the shuttle at the train station where the buses park. It's in the same place. It's not off to the side or on the side street or anything. It's right prominent front and center, which helps with marketing and visibility and really trust as well, right? So if you're riding and you know it's going to be right there when I get off the train, that's a great thing as well. So as I have already said, we started in January 9th. In January, March ridership was very low. I'll show you a slide here in a second. And even though we started out at the beginning with conversations with some of these large employers, like I've mentioned, REI and Amazon, it still took another 6 months, 7 months to get them to actually sign. I don't know if they had to go talk to Jeff Bezos personally, but it was agonizing to watch the emails go back and forth. Bobby Lauder-Young has been doing this work to get them to finally get this thing through and get it signed. So finally they are signed up, and we have been, gaining momentum is really the message I want to leave with you tonight. So here's some numbers. Rides booked monthly, January, dismal. Things getting better in March, some hope. May, twice as many as April. And then things have just been continuing to increase and improve as the weeks and months have gone by. And Bobby's telling me that August is trending to be the best month yet, which is fantastic. One of our companies, the Trust Company, has become one of the leading riders out there. They came to us, we signed them up, and so now when they have an employee show up, they've got a transit option. So they are able to hire them. And now they've added more riders. They have several riders, I'm not sure exact number to date, that are riding. So you can see it is growing. I'd love to see, 50 rides in a day, but if we get 57 rides in July and it's more than we had in June, and we're continuing to see that trend upwards, I'm excited about that. So we're seeing some really good increases over the last couple of months, and anticipate it to continue to grow. This is signups. So you can see that signups were really slow in January. And again, this is not for lack of effort. Bobby has been out literally knocking on doors. He goes into businesses, introduces himself. He's in the businesses that are signed up. He'll go to the lunch room and introduce himself to employees, and really doing a lot of hard work to get the information out there and get people signed up and booking. And so this is rides booked by the different companies. Like I said, the Trust Company, I don't want to say they were a sleeper, but we had our eyes on REI and Amazon, which, as you can see with Amazon in particular, we still have a lot of growth potential there, I believe. National Oak Distributors, if you're not familiar with them, they're a company that does automotive finishings, like paints and waxes and things that they sell. And obviously we've got some others that are out there. The Pizza Commissary, they make pizza dough. They reached out to us. Bobby's been having some back and forth discussions with them. But the latest company that's going to sign up on Wednesday is Damco Maersk. And Maersk is like a big container shipment company. Damco, I think they do distribution for distribution for Walmart. And they have a site that has 400 employees and a lot of ridership potential there. So Bobby was talking with Maersk Damco last week, and he let me know that by this Wednesday they're supposed to sign. So we're seeing, bit by bit, little by little, growth happening. And in that meeting I mentioned a couple weeks ago when we met to talk about transit on the Tide Flats, their runner program that Pierce Transit's doing, they had a grand total of 10 riders. And so they're spending millions on a pilot project and they're not having great results. We are spending money for sure, but we are growing those results. And I think it's going to grow into something that we're proud of as time goes on. And it takes time, obviously. And so as far as promotion and marketing, I've been talking about Mr. Lauderyoung's efforts to date. And this is kind of setup he brings into the lunchroom and where he's trying to market it. Like I said, initially we contacted a lot of large employers prior to starting the service. We had letters of support, really people lining up, and it's just been a challenge to get some of these service agreements signed through some of the corporate bureaucracy. Doing on-site promotions, cold calling, knocking on doors, and even inquiries from train riders, as I mentioned, that have turned into riders, and then inquiries from other companies that know we're doing this and they're reaching out, finding out and connecting with us. So efforts have been paying off. So what's working, kind of as we look at continual improvement, we see the rides are continuing to increase exponentially. There's a high number of new users every month. REI's commuter benefits platform is now integrated, which means they're going to be covering the costs for their employees to ride. What do we need to work towards? Really raising the conversion rate. So you get new riders that sign up, and then are they booking rides? And that's really about trust. It's about setting it up so they know that they're going to meet Bobby at the train platform, and he's going to make sure you get on the bus on time and you get there on time. Continue boots on the ground. I think Damco is an example of our boots on the ground work is just continuing to be fruitful, I think. And then identify new channels of outreach promotion directly to employees, which is Bus Up's efforts, and continue to seek buy-in from employer leadership. So the buy-in part really is about the human resources department as they're recruiting to be making sure that they are offering or making potential new employees aware of a transit option, and continuing to kind of market this internally so that they're taking it seriously and people are aware that they have this option. So that's partly what Bobby is trying to continue to do, is keep this front and center in terms of leadership's buy-in on it so that it continues to grow. And next steps, a couple things that I want to point out about the budget. The council approved a budget amendment. I think they approved it. Yeah, it was last week. Sorry, I just couldn't remember if it was last week or a committee, but so the budget adjustment moved ARPA funds in to cover the rest of the year for the cost of the Sumner Commuter Connector and took it out of the general fund. And then we will be coming back later the year to decide whether or not the city wants to look at continuing service into 2024. And we have had some positive conversations with Pierce County about helping with funding this in 2024. I think we've seen a lot of positive growth. It was disappointing we didn't have REI and Amazon, for example, signed sooner. But I also think that is still potential growth out there that's just kind of waiting. And we can look to that in the next few months. And it's a pilot. So we are kind of learning as we go. And I think it's been positive. And we're just ready to kind of keep going. So happy to answer questions.
Councilmember Potato.
Mayor, if I could just add one point of clarification before we go into questions. We did transfer about $53,000 of ARPA funds, but there still is some general fund costs to close out 2023.
Thank you.
So when people or the companies pay for the transportation, does that money go to Bus Up or does it go into our?
It becomes a credit. Every dollar that we get in fares
Yeah,
becomes a credit towards our next month's bill. So instead of
they're
being
the
10,
ones that collect the money.
yeah, they're collecting the money.
So
Yep.
we don't have to do any bookkeeping.
No. Nope, I get an invoice and it'll have, a certain amount of dollars subtracted from that invoice because of the ridership that we have.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, that's good, but I'm very encouraged. And I mean, I like a lot of things, you have to have it out there, people using it before it really takes off. So it looks good.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Good presentation, Ryan. I want to talk about some numbers. I want to make sure I'm understanding. Just because a person signs up doesn't guarantee they'll ride. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, so rides booked is gonna be more telling than the signups. But the signups, obviously, we want those to translate into bookings.
Oh, sure, sure. And I imagine, like all good carpooling or van pooling programs, it takes a while to get this going. So, we're paying now in the second 6 months, $13,750 a month. Is that correct?
That's correct. Minus any fares that, get credited.
Right. And I thought I saw on a slide, the total number of rides January through July was 170 rides. Was that correct? Was I reading that correctly?
Correct.
So that means that we took in $510 January through July, which that's like 7 months. So that would be $70,000 and $510 credit for the riders. So, and I understand that you're talking about Pierce County maybe subsidizing this. That would be great. So if we don't have to take it out of our general fund until this thing gets up and running. What's going to happen at the end of this year? Do you have any sort of expectations that the number, not just the number of signups, but the actual number of employees riding has to be a certain point before we just declare this dead? Can you talk about that for a minute?
I don't have like a number. I think that's gonna be, I think the conversation will be around what are the numbers today, and then what do we think they could project to into 2024, given marketing, given who's signed up, given what, percentage of ridership we see now. And 2024, if we can get county funding, great. If this thing has to, I think the conversation, if it's popular and it's being used by a certain company, say it's the trust company, maybe, it's the conversation might become, well, you need to fund the bus and not the city, right? And they work it out potentially among the employers out there, if they feel like this is something they want to and need to have continue.
Yeah, I think we sort of talked about that back in the very beginning, that if there was a possibility the city could back out of this thing once it gets underway and gets a good following. So I would support that. I'm just kind of nervous going into next year, budgeting. The wheels of government in the county turn awfully slow, and I know you're not you don't have a crystal ball, but what are the chances that the county will say, nah, we'll pass? Because they've got a lot of expenses in other areas as well. So are you encouraged that they will pick this up?
Yeah, I'm encouraged, and Jason, I know, has had more direct conversations, but the reason I'm encouraged is because when you look at the location data, the folks that are coming to the manufacturing industrial center, the folks who are riding or potentially could ride, a lot of them live in Parkland, Spanaway. So they're in unincorporated Pierce County. So from a kind of a county perspective, it could definitely benefit their residents, their constituency.
Sure. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed, and summertime is a hard time to sign up anybody to ride in a new program. I know from my experience, because people like to take off early or go on vacation or whatever, but when the weather turns sour, this might become a lot more popular. So anyway, good job. Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Cole.
Yes, I'm curious. So the charge per ride was reduced by 50%, which I think is fantastic just because it's more affordable. But I'm curious as to whether or not that dictated more ridership.
Yeah, I think it did. So let me, we made that change in April, and we got basically more than twice as much ridership in May. So I think it had something to do with it, because I think, I mean, when you look at the hourly rate in the north end in terms of entry level positions, $12 a ride plus whatever other fares they're paying to get here becomes pretty steep. Of course, gas prices aren't going down either, if anybody noticed lately. So that's an expensive option too, if you do have a car and you're able to commute.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice work, Brian. Okay, we'll move on to Parks Planning Update and call on Mr. Barry.
Just want to sit here.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Derek Berry, your Community Services Manager. Today I want to talk to you about our Parks and Trail Plan. I want to reiterate that notices and decisions are being made tonight. It's more of an update of what we've been doing, what the plan does for the community. And then an update as well on the Heritage Park Master Plan that you haven't seen as a council in whole. So to begin, every 6 years, the city of Sumner and any jurisdiction that uses RCO, which is the Recreation Conservation Office, has to do an update to their Parks and Trail Plan system to stay eligible for funding. The last time we did this was 2018, when it was adopted. Major things that you do with this is you create a vision and a guiding document for the city. The biggest component we've seen and done to date is community outreach. We've been doing this since it was March at the open house. It's been nonstop with that. So other things that you work on with this is looking at your whole park system, your whole trail system. Where do we have it? Where do we need it? And then making sure that it's equitable. We look at our inventory. Since 2018, we've done quite a bit. We've added several acres. We've identified trail systems that need to be improved, connection points, stuff like that. Another major thing is looking at demands and needs and what the public wants. So I'm going to skip ahead of the slide here. Once again, this goes through the process of what we're looking at. The goals and objectives, which is the vision and mission statement. That's something that staff worked on with Forestry and Parks Commission. It's nothing new. We had this in 2018 as well, and we kind of fine tuned it. So Forestry and Parks Commission has seen that, I think, twice. We talked through it and gave that to the consultant for them to implement into this new plan. The inventory and assessment was really done by staff and the consultant, and then double checked again. It's amazing how many garbage cans we have in each of our parks. Can't believe when you're looking at it, there's 13 at Loyalty Park. That's one of the major processes to make sure we have, hey, here's what our system has. Here's where we need maybe improvement on. Public involvement. So I briefly went over that. We started off with the open house, and I'll go through in another slide, all the stuff we've done for involvement. Another thing they look at is the park impact fee assessment. Back in 2018, we hadn't looked at it since I believe 2004. So we updated that. It's been a very successful thing for us with development. And it's another thing they'll be looking at during this process. The demands and needs analysis, this is where they look at the level of service and they say, hey, this community is missing out on a park system or a trail or a connection. And we can look at here's available lands. So we need to do something here. That's what kind of led to the Bennett property, Quinault property, and some of our trails. Another big thing is the capital improvement program, where we look at what improvements need to be done. Maybe it's brand new development or it's updating a current park. And then plan development and approval is where we go back to council saying, hey, here's the plan, here's what we're looking at. Does this all look good to you? So to dive into more of the community outreach, this is just some of it so far. We've had a Sumner Connects page from day one. So I'm sorry, the open house was actually in May, not March. We did a kickoff survey. It was open for about a month and a half, almost 2 months. I went with the mayor to Daffodil Valley and Maple Lawn Elementary Schools with the Early Act program and did some surveying and talking with the students there. And that was a lot of good feedback. They definitely have their favorites of what they want to see in the parks. We did our pop-up in the park, which was popular in 2018 and again in July this year. The visioning survey is still out right now. We've been pushing that on social media quite a bit. And that's on our Sumner Connects page. And then we'll be looking at doing a prioritization survey where the community can give us input. If you had $100 and here's the cost of different things, where would you want to see it? To help give us an idea and share that with you as part of the plan. Next steps you'll be seeing, Forestry and Parks Commission is going to be seeing a draft plan in September. Followed by the Planning Commission. So the Forestry and Parks Commission will make a recommendation. Maybe with some fine tuning of it. We'll take that to the Planning Commission, let them know Forestry and Parks, this is their baby. They like it or they don't like it. Here's some things they want to look at. Planning Commission says, yes, it looks good with our comprehensive plan. It fits in what our needs are. And then we're bringing it to you, the study session in October. And then we open up a SEPA public comment period in November. We come back to it in November as full council. And then that starts the whole public comment period, really. And then the adoption would be in February 2024. But still quite a ways to go. Do you have any questions on this part before I go into the Heritage Park update? No, okay,
So, anybody on?
good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the Heritage Park Master Plan, we started off quite a while ago. It was actually October of 22. We had purchased the southern portion of the property in July while our RFP was out, or RFQ was out for consultants. So it was kind of one of those, are we going to get this piece of property or not? So that, that was incorporated into this plan. I can tell you next steps of where we're at right now. This is purely conceptual. We've got about 30% design done for the alleyway. I'd say 5% on the building. It's more of a shell and what the programming could be. And then the park itself is probably 20%. Maybe close to 30, but we don't have any of the engineering done on it. We do have a grant application that went into Pierce County's LTAC. Sounds like we've been nominated or selected to receive about $1.7 million to get to final design on the park, the building and the alley, which is a huge win. That wouldn't take place though until 2024. Council has to vote on the proposed budget and it was part of that. So I just got some very, very, very preliminary numbers today. So don't hold me to it. Looking at 18 million total for the whole thing as of right now. There's 30% contingency, and once they start fine tuning it, those usually drop a little bit. The park itself around 7 million, building about 8, alley about 3. So one thing I wanted to share is this is still conceptual. It is the preferred plan as of right now. We'd be going and doing the fine tuning of it in the next few steps. Nothing's set in stone. But it is definitely a lot of work has gone into this and we've received a lot of good feedback. So if I can do the next slide and hopefully it plays. It's supposed to be video. So let's see if it actually works. Their play button. Jeff, is that something you can do? Yeah, look at that. Maybe. So this is a fly through. Right in the picture, the seating is kind of giving us the onto the park as well. One major thing we got feedback wise during our outreach was and families wanted to be able to do something with it. And this is more of a use and this is design on it. It's for the shell. Green room, rooms. Support. Kitchen. North side of the tree. Trees would be condensed into one spot, as opposed to having them every 20 feet or so in the alley. That as well as outreach with business owners. So the daytime event version, daytime just use. Event use. So these, this is up with our draft plan on the Center Connects page for Heritage Park. Any questions?
You have any questions? Councilmember Patel?
Would the stage have any covering, due to weather concerns?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's actually a couple stages that could be used, and that's part of the planning. That main stage with the little mountain thing, we could change that around a little bit. There is an overhang on the building to the right where the glass front is, so they wanted to have that be able to be a stage area as well. And really depending on the venue and what kind of musicians or what kind of act you have, you could also use the terrace area above. So a lot of the improvements and utility stuff will be hidden in plain sight. So there could be vaults in some of those terrace seating and concrete there. It's something they want to have that's available, so we don't have wires going over the sidewalk, stuff like that. So there's a lot of thought that's been going into how this could be best used.
And then,
But yeah, so there would be cover at least for the window side, like the wall of windows there. And then there's been conversation of how far could that overhang go and be supported, because it will cast shadows onto the group as well.
and then the alleyway, there will be no parking in there.
There still will be. So this was the event version of it.
Okay,
99% of the time, it's still gonna be used every day, common parking. Yeah, so we did do some changes. We added ADA parking because we're adding a sidewalk in there as well, because there isn't one now. We have a loading zone and parallel parking up on the northwest side of it as well.
all right, good. Yeah, looks good.
Anybody else? Anybody online, Jeff? No? All right. Oh, Mr. Brown.
That's one thing we've been talking about. So the terraced area would obviously be higher. That one right now, we have it as flat. And one thing we've been discussing and more than likely we'll stay with is having that be artificial turf. With it being used for events, all it would take is one rainy day with a bunch of people out there and you're chasing horrible grass conditions for the rest of the season. So it's stuff we're looking at. If we did a mounding, it might make it harder for the terrace side, but I know the elevation is something that Heritage Park currently has that people do like to an extent. And if you're facing perfectly at the gazebo right now, you can see straight. If you're not, you're leaning like this. So as of right now, it's flat. Mhm. Okay, yeah, the stage right there is 3 or 4 steps high. Yeah, we want to have terrain differences out there for sure. You can't see, okay.
Yeah.
It's something to keep in mind too, so maybe there'll be a slight turning thing. With sidewalks, we'll have to be careful with ADA, but I think it can all be incorporated. We've got a really good landscape architect team we're working with, very creative. Yeah, looking forward to this next phase, as long as Pierce County adopts their budget.
All right. Nobody online yet? Jeff? All right. Thank you.
If I could just reiterate, as Derek mentioned, this is the master plan, right? So that's the highest level plan. The next level down is the full design, and that's what we did get Pierce County LTAC funding for. It just needs to be approved in their budget process. That would occur next year. That will help us identify the actual engineering estimates, and that will help us then seek funding through either impact fees, probably not grants, just to be honest with you, and upfront, there's very limited grant opportunities for these types of projects. But that's a future discussion, but wanted to share with you this exciting stuff. And I just want to thank Derek and all of our city staff. And not just city staff, but we also had a lot of community stakeholders on this master plan. downtown business owners.
SMSA came, we went on field
Yeah.
trips.
Yeah.
It was,
It's been a big, big
Yeah.
project, so.
we had specifically business open houses and meetings with them to hear their concerns, because we knew the alleyway was a very big thing for them. So navigated that pretty well, I think.
Not the least of which was parking and dumpsters and
Yeah.
trying to problem solve that.
And Rhubarb Days turned out to be a very good thing with them seeing the alleyway activated. Some of them did open up the back door and like, hey, wait a minute, this is pretty neat to see. So
Yeah.
it's been a fun process.
We also surveyed at Daffodil to the early cat club there too, and those kids are really excited to help design a park. They don't really even know what it's gonna look like, but they were just, they had some wild ideas. So. Earl, Charlotte, are you good? You have any comments? Patrick? Good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are down to the city administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick thing tonight, just a reminder, next week we had a regular council meeting. And then immediately following the regular council meeting, we have a special study session. So council can complete their annual cybersecurity training. So it's about an hour's worth of training that we'll do as a group immediately after the regular council meeting.
Do we have any council meeting issues, agenda issues? Finance tomorrow. For the finance people. Any meeting problems? Charlotte, Earl? Oh. All right. So we have no executive session, right? All right. I will adjourn this meeting at 6:42.